It's hard to find the time to watch different channels now. There's so many channels. But I think this Colchester Council Watch is quite an important channel. There's a couple of things that they're kind of getting onto the well, I've mentioned it to them. I don't know if anyone's even picked up on it or not yet. But this guy put the question to the council straight. He's like, what powers does this council actually have? There's a lot going on in these events where human beings are not always completely clarified on what they're saying themselves. I'm sure I do it as well, but the clarity of what they're saying and what it even means sometimes is questionable when you watch it back and challenge them on it. A lot of times it's actually possible to discredit or make incredible an entire session. You can actually, if you want to scrutinize every single thing that people are saying, you can actually dismantle pretty much nearly everything on kind of like on the premise that people aren't always right, but people avoid things as well. But anyway, let's just see if we can...
You read the Nolan principles under which you are bound to operate, specifically your obligations to selflessness and accountability across the nation.
So they're challenging the council on some... these are conduct clauses for certain. These are like council conduct clauses. Now, at this point, if you think that I'm stupid and I'm wrong and I am completely retarded, then, I'll hold my hand up. But he just said that there is a clause for selflessness. Selflessness. So that means, I'm quite certain that selflessness means that you're not acting on behalf of yourself. So are they saying that council members, when elected, they're not actually allowed to act on their self? So whenever a vote is called for in a chamber, they count the votes for and against. Now, if they're doing things in the council when only law applies, right, then you can't have a vote because the law would already decide what something is or isn't. Are they voting on what the law is, or are they voting on their constituents' opinions? Now, in a vote, there's free will. You can vote for and against. The councillors can vote for or against, but then each councillor is meant to be voting on at least the interested parties of their constituents. Most people who get elected, what happens is the elected candidate, the councillor, presumes that because they won with a majority, when they go into the council, they have got that majority all the time. That's the presumption, but that is not the case on every matter that is put before the council, because even though they had the majority in the vote to get them there, that presumption, you could suddenly have, if something's getting built in a town or in a village, and all the people who voted for that councillor might not live in that side of the village and they might not have an opinion, right? But true, they voted that councillor in, right? But that doesn't mean that everyone who didn't vote hasn't got a right. They've got a right by being a citizen and by being a voter. So in any one given matter, actually, you can have the electorate flip on one matter just for that matter, then flip back again and say, well, so all of a sudden, everyone's bothered about this matter, and then they're not bothered about anything for, 12 months, right? And that is what the council is meant to be representing. So really, this idea of control of the council, I don't buy it. I think it's a charade, a facade. They've only got control of the council if elected, and then everyone leaves them to their own ends and means. But then there's the principle of this. If a councillor has to act selflessly, how can they act on behalf of a political party that isn't their electorate, that is an actual political party that might be based in London? It's got clauses, but without people, you can't have clauses. You're not voting for a party. It's not like a flag. If you voted for a flagpole, like in America when they salute the flag, right, and then you walk into the council and put up a flagpole and say, right, that flagpole is the Labour Party policies, but it's not a human being. The flag, there's no one to lift the flagpole up and down to raise the flag up and down. You can't, like, lower the mast, raise the mast. There's no one to touch it. The flag can't vote by itself, and there's, unless you get some, a draft coming through, if the flag blows, it's a yes vote or something, there's no human. Now, selflessness is a human attribute. It's a faculty of a human being, right? A political party, they call them an entity, right? An organisation. But without any people in the entity, there's no one there to speak or represent it. And it's not the law. If you're selfless, how can you even act for a political party? Now, the presumption is that this person got elected, 50% of the people didn't turn up, only 50% of the voters turned up, and let's say, 35% of them voted for Labour. Labour candidate gets elected, but they're elected to represent their ward, right? Now, when they're going in to vote, if everyone in that ward, right, moved away, right, moved house, like, this is just hypothetical, right? So no one actually lived in that ward, but there was still an elected councillor, and they're selfless, they're acting for an electorate area. When they go into the council and vote, who are they representing? Because the Labour Party are based in Newcastle or whatever, and, whatever, Keir Starmer's front door. Keir Starmer's not an electorate in that area. So how can a councillor be selfless from themselves, and a party called Labour, who, if no one was in the area anymore that even voted for Labour, whose vote would the councillor be representing if they're selfless? Because there won't be anyone there to represent the vote anymore. We have these by-elections. If someone, this guy from Rochdale, this Sir whatever he's called, I forget his name, right? He's just passed away, and George Galloway has to be replaced, right? Even though there's a general election coming up as well, George Galloway has to replace him, right? Swiftly. So he's just been voted in to represent Rochdale. But what if there were no people in Rochdale to vote him in, right? How could he get elected? There may be some fail-safe process where you can flick a coin or whatever. But if, now, if that councillor does live in their own electorate, although in America and in some places you can't have certain people from within certain areas. I think in America, one senator can be from the area and one senator cannot be from that state. I'm not sure. I'll have to check up, but I'm pretty sure something like that. If they're selfless, I'm not sure that if there aren't any electors, I don't know if the councillor can rely on their vote themselves or not. I'm not sure they can, as a fail-safe, I think in America, I think if there is, in the Senate in America, I read that if there is an even vote on anything, then I think the vice president they get to decide or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's recently when I read it, and I'm not sure what that principle comes down to. So this selfless thing, I'm interested in exploring what it actually means. because the more and more I think about it, the more and more an actual political party doesn't really make sense in human beings. I think they presumes that they've got a majority of people in a given area that support all the things they said they're doing, so they're presuming that they're going along with them, but that isn't the case, because in any matter that gets decided in the council, anyone can change suit at any time, regardless of who they voted for. And that's when people are getting annoyed with these councils, when they're redeveloping town centres and all manner of things, spending money not on the things that the community wants. And this is the problem. So this selflessness thing, I can't see how it's possible to operate with it. I'm not sure that it's logical. Now, you might prove me wrong, but this is why I'm saying, let's explore it. Someone put me right on it. And hold on a second, I'll move on to the next bit I wanted to raise. I think it's this guy. I've got another, and I've actually taken this out as a full clip, this part of this guy, but this last bit.
Committed to pursuing the transparency and answers we rightly deserve. So I repeat my question, my simple question, which I would like an answer to this evening. Exactly what authority does the council or any public office holder have over members of the public? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. It's a philosophical question, so undoubtedly...
Right, so you just also, did you notice the mace there? They've got the mace in the chamber. The mace is actually the mace of the king. It's meant to be the same mace that is in Parliament. Obviously, King Charles is not Shiva, so he's not like got 8 arms or 6 arms or whatever. He can't hold, however many 100 maces at the same time. Not even Sauron in Lord of the Rings can do that, although he's got a very, very big mace. The mace represents the king's authority, and they're all, as far as I understand, they're all meant to be the same mace, but it just happens to manifest at multiple. They've got copies of it to represent it being manifest in multiple places, the authority of the king. I've done quite a few talks on this Mace of Parliament, because remember the king, Charles, isn't allowed in the House of Commons, right? Charles is not allowed in the House of Commons. It's illegal. The Queen wasn't allowed in there. So what's his mace doing in there? And, some of these talks, I won't go through legislation clauses. Some of the guests on Richard Verb's, some of them are a bit superficial and kind of, they are only talking on experience, not necessarily on actual clauses and clauses and clauses and clauses of legislation. But I do understand the basic principle of this, and I think it needs to be contemplated more, because I think it's significant. The mace is in the House of Commons, the one for Parliament, and Charles isn't allowed in there. So the Commons have got possession of the mace. In fact, an MP tried to walk out with it not too long ago, which is quite amusing. I think there's a video of it. I used one of the clips from it. Charles doesn't have the mace. It's in the Commons and he's not allowed in there. That means a lot, because the House of Commons acts with the authority of the king, so they can make law. The Commons, elected Common, makes law, and then the king signs it off after it's been agreed through the House of Lords, checked, and then it goes to royal assent by the seal, right? Now, the thing is, when you're doing work in Parliament for government or in connection with Parliament, there was argument with Lord Hanningfield case that, does his parliamentary privilege cover him when he's outside of the Houses of Parliament? Although he's definitely doing work for Parliament. That's the main premise of his immunity. They're not going on Magna Carta that lords and barons can only be prosecuted by their equals, because they're saying that clause of Magna Carta has been repealed, which that's another argument. But that would have been the main clause that Hanningfield would rely on with Jeremy Johnson KC, sorry. He's KC now. So, Hanningfield, I'm not going to read Jeremy Johnson KC's paper again, even though I probably understand it more and more this time. It does refer to an earlier paper by someone else, which has probably got more in it, but I haven't read that yet. I probably could do with reading it, but I'm going on what Johnson himself wrote. I'm quite certain, unless I forget, as far as I could gather, he based quite a lot of his argument on the clerk as an example. Now, I might have misread that, but as far as I could understand, he gave an example, a reference to the clerk, that the clerk is free to leave the court and do work for the court outside of the building. And unless I read Jeremy Johnson's paper wrong, that model he suggested or inferred that the Lord Hanningfield also similarly can do work for the lords outside of the building, like, Lord Adonis going, making observations of the trains, right? Which is basically what a police officer does. A police officer is only engaged in policing because he's pursuing criminals and ultimately bringing them on trial into the court. So it's, the police investigation, or else a police officer won't be able to do the work, because the only reason the police officer is doing work is so they can uphold the law and bring people to justice through the courts. So, in connection with the courts. So, the thing with the mace is that the king doesn't have hold of it in his hand, does he? He isn't holding it. He isn't swinging the mace, like hitting people with it. Right? It's illegal for us to draw arms against the king, right? But we can bring complaints to him, grievances by suit, right? So the king hasn't got hold of his mace, and he cannot hit and strike and attack the Commons, the members of Parliament, because he hasn't got his mace. They're taking it off him, right? So he can't. In law, you've got attack and defence, although that's in suit, but it's meant to be based on chivalry and knighthood. And I think the conquest, because certain jurisdictions had different courts under the Anglo-Saxons until gradually the country got conquered and fell under other rule. But this is conquest. But effectively, we've got the right for defence and fair trial and so forth that was argued for. Now, the immunity from prosecution of the crown, because the king cannot attack or bring to justice, as far as I understand, the MPs when they're doing parliamentary work, and or anyone else who's doing casework for government. That's how I understand it. And that is what the basis of the Bill of Rights is, that it's the right of the subjects to petition the king, and all prosecutions and commitments for doing so are illegal. So prosecution, this is a symbol of, the sword, basically. That's how I understand it. Now, MPs can, they stand down usually. There is some argument over, can we have impeachments and so forth, but it happens in the Lords, doesn't it? I think the Commons can. We're getting into John Pym now, and these postal workers who are now actually getting a legal matter dealt with in Parliament officially. Lord Chief Justice can do representations to the House of Commons. I think they've got to be. They said they'd made some laws so MPs can be prosecuted. Some of them have been done for driving offences and things like that in the courts, but. You see, that argument with Lord Hanningfield, with Jeremy Johnson KC, why didn't they already know that, and why didn't they already use it before? Why did he go to prison and then they only decided to use it later on? I'm interested to find out when they suddenly claim that MPs can be given speeding points when they're driving to the Commons for work, or it's part of parliamentary work. I don't think they can because of this principle and the Bill of Rights. But I think they can be prosecuted. I think they might be able to be prosecuted by the Lords. Well, we've got Supreme Court now. This is the thing. None of them seem to get prosecuted. Some of them have been done for drugs possession or not, but I think they're probably arguing that is not parliamentary work. You see, Liz Truss has been known to have, recreational drugs on her, but, what happens if she said, she had to, do some research for, Department of, Leisure, Culture and Sport, then you should have an argument whether she's got immunity or not. I need to look into it further, but that Constitutional Reform Act, representation with the House of Commons, does mean that the House of Lords it retains the constitutional right to the House of Commons, but can they be prosecuted or not? That's the thing. And I think that mace is meant to be representative of that immunity and also they've got the authority of the king for the speaker, to pass things through Parliament to make orders under, the power of, the realm and the king, but obviously they've got to check it off and so forth. So they've got the king's power, basically authority, and they've got some amount of protection. In Magna Carta, barons and lords can be fined, but only by other barons and lords. But they don't have that anymore. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong, but it would solve a lot of problems. Now they're having to. Johnson calls up this exclusive cognizance, right? And Johnson, KC, he's going on about clause, Bill of Rights, Article 9 or whatever, but that is completely to do with the right to petition, because it's all to do with the King's Bench, and it's a tumultuous petitioning act basically, and the prehistory leading up to the tumultuous act, and then subsequently after there, and what happened to. So this King's Bench issue is about a courts that existed. There were lots of high courts, like the Royal Court of Commission and the Star Chamber. There were various high courts in and around Parliament as well. But this King's Bench was when you could, you had police side and Crown side, and that figures into the petitioning. And that is what the Bill of Rights refers to when they actually made prosecutions by the King's Bench illegal. And clearly, obviously, in the quarter sessions and assizes must have been as well. But I think that tumultuous act is referring to each case on merit of where the petition is, whether it's directed to local council or not. So that, you notice the mace in the background there. I've actually ended up going on a massive long tangent about that mace. So this councillor, this councillor here, we've now just talked about the mace. So they've got this mace in the council because the council operates with the authority of the king, and they're doing council work, right? And the chair of the council has a commission for that position, which is like a commission for a court. A justices of the peace have a commission of an area. They aren't a judge for the whole country. I didn't actually know that. They're given a commission for a certain area, a certain. They've got a circuit. They're called circuits. From the Tower of London, they had circuits that actually went around the whole country and certain commissions, but they have areas now. So the head of the chair of the council needs to be a justice of the peace in order to make orders in the council, because that's his authority. But he doesn't have a commission as a justice of the peace for a court. Some of the councillors used to be justices of the peace for criminal courts as well as civil. Well, a district judge can sit civil and criminal cases, but they also had this position in the council which has to have a commission for it to make orders. But they're not hearing criminal cases. They only have got a commission to hear cases of the council, because they're obviously elected, political cases for the council. And there's a rule that they're not allowed to be part of a court. So, like, the councillor, the chairman of the council cannot be part of a criminal or civil court. He could appear to give evidence as a witness, but then he would be invited into the court as part of a trial giving evidence. He wouldn't be a member of the staff. This is why there's some dubious things going on with those council tax court cases, when they rent a room out in the court or rent the court out, and then they got these judges popping up that people have been, I recognise him, it's unlawful. Well, I don't know how they can rent the court out. Why don't they just book a session like anyone else? But there's some dubious and questionable things going on with who they're getting into those courts, because they're not allowed to have anyone who works in the council as a member of the court. Unless a member of the council is prosecuting and they're the prosecutor. But that's strange, because some prosecutors have their own room in the court. It's like a special little room for prosecutors. But then again, there's a room for defendants as well to sit in with the solicitors. But they have like a permanent room. I don't think the CPS are regarded as a member of the court, but it's almost like they've got their own cushy little chill out room there and so forth. That's dubious. But when they're getting these prosecutors in on behalf of the council, you're starting to get into dangerous water when, who the staff are and judges, and they've got these computers set up and this and that. So that the thing with the mace you've got to understand is that the mace is like, it's kind of like a parliament, but for a local area, right, that deals with local issues. Now, that the chairman just said that the gentleman just asked him a question: what powers do the council have? And the chair of the council, I could actually call this into the Judicial Conduct Office, because I think council chairs are under the jurisdiction. He said, that's a philosophical question. Or did he say it's not a philosophical question? Let's just listen back to it.
We're committed to pursuing the transparency and answers we rightly deserve. So I repeat my question, my simple question, which I would like an answer to this evening. Exactly what authority does the council or any public office holder have over members of the public? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rees. It's a philosophical question, so undoubtedly
He just said it's a philosophical question. He just said 3 words then, very clear. He said the word it's, then he said the word the letter A. Oh, sorry, it's a philosophical question. That's 4 words. He said 4 words. It's a philosophical question. That is not a philosophical question. That's never seen a philosophical question. A philosophical question is a matter of pure human opinion, pure human interpretation, pure human ideology, thinking, philosophy requires deep thinking and deep understanding of subjects and the nature of things, right? I don't think that when he comes out with this answer that the council operates on law, that is a factual answer and a factual question. A philosophical question would be, what is the meaning of a flower? Right? That's a philosophical question. Or what is it to be happy? Right? Or what is the value of a relationship? Right? That's a philosophical question, in my opinion. When someone asks a very question based on fact, which is already well established and written, which doesn't require any human opinion because it's fact based, the council operates on the law, is what he says.
Councillor King again.
Oh, well, that's a corker, Mr. Mayor.
Well, it is a corker because he blatantly lied. He's just told a lie in a live council session. He's just over a microphone and speaker. The chair of the council has just lied. He's in contempt of the council. He has just lied in a live recording, and everyone is kind of oblivious except one guy who actually comes out with "that's a corker," and it's funny because it is a corker. It's a corker of a lie, a porker of a lie, and I think he knew that subconsciously. And what he said, his colleague, is that, wow, that's a corker, because I think that he had subconsciously realised that guy had just lied. And that's what that's a corker, because it was a lie. Now, that is actually reportable to the Judicial Conduct Office under the commission of a council that is just... the council is now in contempt of council because they're now they've gone from fact and truth into falsehood and lies. So they're now conducting proceedings unlawfully because they're making statements that are untrue, and they're basing proceedings on falsehoods and falsifications. So therefore the proceedings are not legally sound. They are now corrupt, and we've got this is not a criminal court, but this is just the course of justice means the course of due lawful process, and he just said that this council runs on law. So we've now got a perversion of the course of justice happening in Colchester Council, which everyone is going along with and participating because of no one really is. They're not there. They're not able to perform. They don't have the cognitive capacity, the response time, the sharpness. This is what they're talking about with Dr. John Campbell now, with, many children are born with, vitamin D deficiency and so forth. They're eating burgers, their microbiome's not working, they're not sharp. If they suddenly had, spikes in chemical neurotransmitters, very slight fluctuations, their consciousness would be perked. They would understand the meaning of words to a deeper significance. Their memory would suddenly come more stronger, and they would be able to reflect and understand what was being said in a quicker, shorter amount of time without having to be a machine or a robot. And then they will be able to understand that what is happening is that some of these people are incapable of capacity. They're incapable of a professional proceedings. They're incapable of doing the job.
Act within the law. So the simple answer is whatever the law is, whatever the issue is, we have to act in accordance with that and account for our actions. Thank you.
So they're saying that they have to accord with the law and account for the law. So that is in the workings of the council, in the accountancy, in the secretarial work, in the managing of documents, in processes, procedures, health and safety, in the order of proceedings. I don't want to call it business. The council call it business. It should be referred to as proceedings, or let's do democracy. The thing is, they are accountable to the law, they are accountable to comply with the law, and they are accountable to follow the law. But when it comes to the votes, they have a vote, a free will vote. Now that vote is not based upon the law. It's not based upon the law, because if it was, they wouldn't have a vote. They would have to do what the law says. And if you have to do what the law says, then how can you have a vote? They can't vote whether they follow procedures or not. They can't vote whether they turn up for the council or, well, I think some of them don't turn up in Parliament, do they? You know, it would be okay if in Parliament every single MP had to attend every debate, wouldn't it? That would be some law. It would be worthwhile having them there rather than an empty chamber with Andrew Bridgen MP by himself, you know. They have to comply with the law when it says, now when they vote, they get to vote in favour or against. Now, according to what has been said on those sheets of conduct, it says they have to be selfless. So if they have to be selfless, how can they have a vote for themselves or their political party, given that every other member of the party is not a member of the electorate they're representing, and the party itself is not a real thing? It's only it's not a living entity. It's just a collection of ideas on paper, and principles. So they're actually when they vote, they're meant to be voting on the opinion of their constituents, of their electors, right? And the problem is that Labour presume they usually, if people go around about their own business and, you know, go to McDonald's and buy chips or whatever, and they don't bother writing into the council or doing petitions or complaining or anything, there's a presumption that because the Labour MP is elected by a majority and they've said, oh yeah, we like what this party's ideas are, then they're presumed to be able to vote on those people unless on any given matter in council they are challenged and defeated in vote on any given matter. Let's take building, you know, a playground, because it's the simplest thing. Building a playground, right? So if Labour have a policy to build new playgrounds, right, and the Labour councillor gets elected and there's a vote on whether to build a playground, they want funding for it, then the Labour, unless any other person in that town or village electorate area, that ward, for that one, we have 3 councillors for each ward, which is complicated when some of them are for different parties and so forth, right? But this is why they all vote, you see. But let's go, some councils have 1 councillor. That makes it a bit more easier to understand. There are different types of councils and there are different models of running a council. You can actually try and get your council changed, and if they've got a mayor or not, and whether it's a metropolitan council or a county council and so forth. And I'm not going to get the book out and go through every single clause. I've been through the clauses and I've read the book and I know the procedures, and I've got a good idea about how they're kind of acting in ignorance and understanding it as it suits them. That's quite clear for certain. When there's one councillor for each ward, which makes it simple, which you can have, right? If that councillor's political party said they're going to build playgrounds and they're voted in, they're going to go into council under the presumption that they've got the majority on that clause, right? Unless otherwise. Now, what is this otherwise? Well, this otherwise is if 500 people write into the council or ring them up to complain and object, or if they write into the council or councillor, whichever, or if they do a petition, right? Now, the thing is, those Labour voters, if 50% of the people didn't turn up, and only 50% of the people who did turn up, that's 1/4 of the electorate, voted for Labour. So let's say there's 1,000 people in the village, just to make it simple for round numbers, right? So let's say there's 250 people support that councillor, they voted for Labour, but then someone does a petition, right, and gets 250 signatures from people who didn't actually vote in the election to say, we don't want a new playground, then you're challenging them. Now, the problem is, those 250 people who voted for Labour, just because they voted for Labour, they might not actually want a new playground in that town, although they did vote for Labour, but they voted for Labour on other clauses like, tampon tax, or, and that's the central government, but, I don't know, just, housing or whatever, not playgrounds. So this is the thing. Now, the thing is that the votes in the council, it goes, all of the councillors vote on various issues, not just one ward. But that is that councillor's ward, right? And that councillor can get certain things done for their area anyway, right? But when it comes to bigger matters like the entire, county, the entire big things like redevelopments and so forth, then you're bringing in all the councillors. But the thing is that with the petition, so there are a lot of occasions where you can do a petition and a council will do something even if you get 100 signatures, right? Just get a small number. But the thing is, you can oppose all the people who are under their presumption, who follow them on any matter. The thing is, if it's a big area and you've got 3,000 people, you only have to equal 5%. And you can ask for, under the Local Government Act, you can ask for, you can say, we want a referendum, 5% of the local area, and, there's a set price, it's £806 or something like that, when you can have a local referendum, right? So, if a local area collects, 800 signatures or whatever is equal to 5%, it's a distinguished area of political designation. Now, if you have an £806 referendum of whether or not there's a new housing estate being built in that ward, and the people vote against it, right? Then, only one person's put planning permission in and they're going to make, £5 million out of building the houses. But the people of the village, they don't want those houses. So if they vote against it and oppose it, then the people there don't want it. So now the thing is, that councillor then has got to act on what those people have voted. But if the decision is in the whole entire chamber and all the different councillors from the other areas, they might not. They might want to challenge that councillor. This is where I need to look into it more. But the thing is, if one councillor had had a referendum in their ward and that ward had voted, if that councillor had had a referendum in their ward, which only costs £806, which is probably a lot less than what the developer themselves spent on architects and drawings and plans and so forth, right? And it's going to affect the area where you live forever, by the way. Let's not forget that. Why would the council and other councillors vote in a council chamber to build somewhere that an entire electorate area ward had voted against because they don't want houses there? Why would other councillors, in light of that, say that, oh, well, we're going to, outvote the people? What they'd have to do then is say, if they did not agree with that decision, that vote, then they would have to take it to the next level, which is have an entire county referendum, which, this is, but with the consultations, they're asking everyone anyway on things like this. And the thing is, and a lot of times in these consultations, the people who bother to have a say, you don't have to have a say, you don't have to turn up to vote for councillors. They aren't in favour of a lot of these things. So how can they disregard the consultation when the cost of a consultation, surely we've paid for it? Why would we pay the council to hold a consultation for the whole county, and where everyone can have a say, and they're even going out of the way to tell everyone, hear ye, you're not having to sponsor it yourself out of your own money and go around flyering and let them know about it. Oh, no, they let you know about it, all right. Yeah, they let you know about it. You don't have to sponsor it and go flyering or put it in the newspaper yourself to try and let people know what's happening. No. Why would we pay for a consultation, which effectively is a referendum, and then not want the council to be held liable to what the results are? Because that would be like going into a court and asking a jury for a verdict and then the judge deciding whether he wanted to have that verdict or not. It would be insane. It actually not only would be insane, it surely would be a perversion of the course of justice. And I don't know how they've got any legislation through which would, in writing, give them such a right to not uphold any such a referendum stroke, in brackets, consultation. It would seem ludicrous, or if only to get party political things through, which they wanted to get through. Yet, on that form which they've got, which says the conduct of councillors, says that all councillors have to be selfless, right? Now, this is the titty twister. This is the brain twister. This is the mind bender, the mace bender. This is the mace bender, right? If Starmer wants to get that mace and wrap it round his neck and tie it in a knot, because George Galloway probably would pick up the mace in Parliament and put it around Starmer's neck and tie it in a knot. And that is meant to be a joke, by the way, right? The fact is that if you have a public consultation, right, which includes asking the people who voted you in and elected you, the people under presumption who have the priority if no one else has a say or chooses to intervene, leave it on autopilot. These people elected that councillor, and that portion of the public are always under presumption unless anyone else says otherwise or exercises their right to object or intervention, right? The consultation not only asks people who didn't vote or who voted for another party, it also asks the people who are under presumption, the people who elected the councillors, right? So if it asks, as I say, in brackets, everyone, including the people who elected the councillors, if that consultation comes in to the council, and if that is the opinion of the public, right, riddle me this: if that is to be disregarded when a decision is made, then to whom's opinion are the councillors passing the planning order on? Given that each one of them, without their electorate, is selfless. To whom's opinion are they raising their hand to vote for and against, given that their presumed electors have actually been asked in the consultation to state their opinion? And if the presumed choose not to, then they're disqualified. Surely. Because they're getting asked on one matter. They haven't got automatic presumption for everything. Because they're not addressed on everything, are they? They're given the opportunity for any planning you can object. If no one says yeah or nay, then it's left as default. Surely. Whom? If you are selfless, sat in a council, you cannot lift or raise your hand without powers. Now, if you've gone to a consultation and asked the public, that means that if your electors did not choose to have an opinion on that point, on that planning thing, then they don't have an opinion on it. None for or against. So that means that the people in the consultation, that is the public's opinion on how the votes will be cast. So how, if you disregard the consultation, whom's raising your hand to vote for or against? Who's lifting your hand up? A sheep? Jesus? Barry Shearman? Who is raising your hand up in the air? If you disregard the consultation, are you doing it yourself? Oh, I see, the councillor's opinion comes into it now. It's his opinion. So how is it selfless then? Riddle me that, Batman and Robin.
Next up is Sir Bob Russell. He had quite a bit to get off his chest as well.
Mr. Mayor, at the meeting of the council last autumn, I spoke about the Town Deal Board, a quango responsible for spending of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money in Colchester. I mentioned that at its previous meeting on the 17th of August 2023, only 6 of the 15 members bothered to attend. At the board's last meeting on 16th of November, the minutes revealed that only 4 turned up. That is the equivalent of only 13 councillors attending your meeting this evening. There's just one city council on the board, the leader of the council. From January 2020 to April 2021, it's Councillor Corey, with Councillor Dundas from June 21 to April 22. Both had a 100% attendance. From May 2022 has been Councillor King. The records show he attended 5 of the 7 meetings. One of the projects undertaken by the Town Deal Board is Holy Trinity Church, owned by the council. The intention...
So that's that. It's not a philosophical question. It's never seen a philosophical question. That council is in contempt of council. I might even send this video into the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office because I've started to complain about council chairman now, because I believe that because they've got a commission of peace, which is effectively, that is what gives them the power to even make orders in the council under that mace power, not criminal or civil cases. They, there is a, well, they're lying, basically. They're lying in sessions, and then the consultation, it can't be lawful. The consultation is an abuse of process, and any enactment that the government has made to claim that they can do that is in breach of Magna Carta clause, because the Magna Carta says that, and all legislation that is enacted has to be compatible with the Magna Carta clauses. If it's incompatible with it or in conflict with it, then it was enacted unlawfully. Now, it says that we, the people, cannot have our things taken away from us or our effects, which, if we're taxpayers and we are paying for all these things, that are being done, and the council's affecting our happiness and well-being, they're taking our effects from us, because they're taking the effect of happiness away and putting you into a depressed and unhappy state. So they've actually taken your happiness away from you. So Magna Carta says that they can only take things through a lawful due process, and either through points of law or the opinion of the peers. Now, when someone makes a case for something, you do it on points of law. But ultimately, and this is all how many squirrels are there in the trees? This is the thing with Robert F. Kennedy. He makes legal cases based on how many frogs are dying, how many trees get killed by toxic chemicals, and so forth and so forth. Facts, facts, facts. But ultimately, those civil cases don't have a jury. In criminal cases, you can have a jury or not. And when you do have a jury, the jury, it doesn't have to decide on points of law. It can decide on their own opinion, and that is the difference. And in council, when we call for referendums and petition, we are choosing to bring the jury into the matter. Well, the council is meant to be voting on the people's opinion. They're really the representative of the jury, really, in a way. Now, when the council say you can only make objections on certain points of law, those are the legal points and basis that will be put forward. But ultimately, it is a free and open process. Well, you might say, well, that's silly. Why have all these points? Well, because the lawful due process makes sure that everything is known, all facts are heard, and people understand it properly in order to make an informed decision. And this is, why I have a barrister, because the barrister is there to convince, persuade, question, explore, find out what happened. But you've got different barristers in the defence and in the attack, and the defence barristers trying to bring in points on to convince people one way and the other. But in the council, you see, the person putting planning permission in is trying to make a case to the council that they should allow him to build, right? And when you object, you're putting in a case for reasons why you don't think you should build, right? And the council have got to, judge that and take it into account when they vote. But if you have a referendum, a petition for one, you're voting. It's a yes or no vote. It's for or against. Look, you can have a million reasons why you should elect one councillor over the other one, right? And they can, sell their pitch to you. This is what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing now. Why should you vote for him? He's trying to make a strong case for why you should vote for him, right? But, and he's giving you facts, there are newts dying, we're getting radiation from mobile phones. These are facts, these are arguable things. you know, and these are true things, and it's a lawful process because he's, you know, allowed to give his case to you, and it's all been heard. But ultimately, when you go in and vote for him, you don't have to vote if he proved that the rivers were getting destroyed. That doesn't mean, therefore, that you have to vote for him, does it? You can say, well, I don't care about the rivers, and vote against it. This is where really we've been deceived, and the corporate takeover and with their policies. You see, the thing with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think now what is very, very clear, and I think this is probably the most important thing that will happen or that could happen to the entire planet, is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is suing and prosecuting these corporate people for what they're doing to the environment. He's taking them to courts. Now, these big companies, these big organisations, they, according to Matt Kennard, are taking governments to court. If they don't like the laws that the government are making, they're going to a special court for special people, and they're actually fining governments because they didn't like the law that they made, and it's lost them potential money. But the big mind bender, the big wake-up call, the big eureka moment is that, well, can't we do that? Why aren't the people, because of what these big organisations and companies have done to our health, strategised it, fed us all these foods and burgers, destroyed the microbiome, put us into a weakened state of vitamin D. A lot of people knew about it. They continued. They even strategized and planned these recipes. They premeditated it. They even put building through, and they pushed it and carried on. There's got to be a liability to that. The future projected health of the population. What about our future projected health? Who's going to be accountable for that? And that is a case, if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. suddenly switches from prosecuting these big companies for polluting the environment and then switches to prosecuting them for harming us, which I think Rand Paul would get excited about, then you're talking. Because then the public have been damaged by these big companies. But the thing is, we've been told that some of these companies have got immunity, or you can't be fined or sued for the medical things. Well, why is it that we haven't got the... It seems absolutely insane that a government that is making the law and making these laws that we can't sue these companies, that they've still got it so these companies can still sue the government for their profits. Wouldn't it be that those companies would be the ones making those laws, getting the government to make those laws where you can have these courts where they can sue the government for their profits? Where is the equivalent of these companies but us suing these companies for, well, crime? I don't just think it's a matter of compensation and suing them. I think that it's criminal. I actually think that it's a genocide, a crime, you know, and I think if these companies are suing governments for only affecting their potential future profits, then with our projected future health, I think that by the time we finish with them, with the amount of money that these companies keep knocking around, they're not going to have any money left. And that should scare Bill Gates. That should frighten Bill Gates more than George Galloway scares Rishi Sunak. That should frighten them, and there likely will be more volcano eruptions. There likely will be more train derailings because the wood creaks and out comes the freaks. These people don't want their money taken from them, and there will be terrorist incidents, RAF planes taking off funny, misfiring, Chinese missiles going wrong when they launch. Worse, because these people are now beyond leaders, I quote King Charles, beyond leaders. They're beyond leaders and they're using a military-style campaign. Beyond leaders with trillions at their disposal, and we are handicapped. If you are opposing what King Charles refers to as forces that are from a private sector beyond our leaders and with trillions at their disposal, and they're using a military-style campaign, then we need to be very concerned if we're handicapped, if we don't have our health, if development is vitamin D deficient, if people in council chambers can't even understand what they're talking about or saying or understand the procedures properly because they have slight, 5 milligrams less of dopamine shooting into their brain, and they don't quite get the eureka moment in time to realise what they're doing when they're doing it. If someone is asked a question on point of law and a council chairman interprets that as a philosophical question, what is a flower? What does it mean to be happy? Yeah, no, what law, excuse me, chairman, law is this council operating on? Oh, that's a philosophical question. No, it's never been further from a philosophical question. It wouldn't be a philosophical question if it had Leonardo da Vinci's paintbrush stuck out of it with a big blotch of, pink paint. It's not a philosophical question. It's never seen a philosophical question, and it will never be a philosophical question. It is a question of point of law. What powers do this council have, and what are they running on? That's not a philosophical question. It doesn't require a human meaning or interpretation or abstract. It asks questions of written, known law, procedure and facts that are already predefined and written out, and someone is requesting the council to summarise them in a concise answer. It has absolutely nothing whatsoever remotely close to being associated with philosophy, any philosophical subject or thought whatsoever. None. So I don't know where the council chair is coming from with his response. And I don't know where the power to raise the hand in the council is coming from on planning decisions when they aren't allowed to enter a self-based vote.